Go ahead, Councillor Downey.
I appreciate the document that was prepared for us by our CFO. And I have read this book with you. We certainly have funds to be able to assist them. So I guess the question would be, is this coming out of our general funds or out of our COVID-19 Safe Start grant?
Okay, I'll defer to our CFO, please.
Would you mind repeating the question? It's a little louder for me.
To fund this, would it come from our general operating or from our COVID restart grant?
So, Councillor Downey, when I prepared this report, I had limited myself until grant Park Cup Festival line, which had an amount of $2,000. I was instructed by the CEO to add the COVID-19 Safe grant of $880,000. I was also informed, and I have read that resolution that was passed, that the council decided that these funds would be allocated in the manner that is noted here. If the council decides that these funds will not be funded through the COVID-19 grant, 880,000, then I don't see we having funds in any of the categories listed above. So I'm looking for directions. The way this report is written, I would think if we want to fund, the funds need to come from the COVID-19 Safe Restart grant.
Thank you. I have a question regarding, I know that you've made some inquiries about some of the other suggestions or requests that have come before us. Would this be considered, and I know that we had a portion set aside for vulnerable people.
Right.
Would this be considered infrastructure? And how does that fall in your correspondence with the government on what can be used and what cannot be used?
So, Councillor, I'll start with a long answer. Mayor, I'll start with a long answer and then I'll conclude this with my analysis. I have with me the grant document that's dated November 2nd, 2020. It reads, this funding will support local governments as they deal with increasing operating costs and lower revenue due to COVID-19. It will ensure that local governments can continue to deliver the services that people depend on in their communities. Eligible costs include addressing revenue shortfalls, facility reopening and operating costs, emergency planning and response costs, and a few other. The application that is written is saying that they are preparing for emergency. What I have done is, I have sent an email to our grant officer asking him or her to confirm whether this application and the usage will qualify as an eligible cost under this grant. I have not received the answer as I sit here. And I must also admit, the light bulb that I should ask came in 15 minutes before 5.
Thank you.
That's okay.
So would that be something we table until we get an answer then? I think we could motion to approve it subject to the information, unless the information we should not.
Yeah, and then Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mayor Rick Strum. Through our donations policy, we updated in, I do believe it was June of 2021 for the COVID-19 fund allocation. The Legion applied through our large donation application, which is not through the COVID-19 fund, so we would also require them to provide us with some additional information under that new policy.
Which includes financials.
That includes financials.
Or we could motion to approve it.
Okay. Councillor Cole.
Yes, a question for our CFO. I noticed we recently approved some money for the Rotary Club to do a new sidewalk around the town hall. I forget how much that is, but is that coming out of our Safe Restart grant, or it's not really listed here?
So, Councillor, I was informed that the resolution number 182 of 2021. The council approved this grant funding. And I'm not sure whether what you're referring to, and pardon me because I'm new, whether it is referring to the same or something different. So
Correct.
So
Yeah,
just, if you can, explain what it was.
Well, maybe part of CAO could just recap that motion.
Well, yeah, I think what he's asking is, that was for you're referring to the Rotary to build a pathway in behind the town office, which
Correct.
was, for the seniors, and it was a safety issue for them as well.
But I believe that was a COVID money. And
Yes.
that's why it's not listed here, and does it still qualify even though it's a capital type project?
So can you just confirm that that was from the COVID funds? I believe it was.
Yeah, it was $26,000, and let me just see if I can find the minutes from that meeting.
I think I got the answer.
Okay.
In my financial update that we'll be talking of in a minute, the last page of that is approved grants and the money spent as of September 30th, 2021. It said that during the council meeting held on June 20th, 2021, the council approved a $26,000 grant application from Rotary. This was to be funded through the Vulnerable Persons COVID grant, $880,000. I don't know whether that answers your question.
That answers my question, but can you or are you looking into if that does indeed qualify? Because it is a capital project.
So, Councillor, last week, I believe, Councillor Shelley had sent me some comments. She wanted to include a list of projects that she felt could be covered through this COVID grant, $880,000. What I did is, rather than going to our grants officer one by one and asking questions, I left it to this meeting to see if I can take those ideas, those dream projects that we have on other projects, and I can put them all in one email and ask for one question. I didn't make an exception today before coming where I sent you one email. So the answer to your question is, no, I have not confirmed that. I have been told very clearly by them that any project that is capital in nature will not be funded through this grant. They have also further informed that there are many municipalities like ours who have not spent the money, such as us. Sometime in next, I'm not speculating, I'm just informing what I've been told. They said sometime in summer of next year, province is thinking of changing the definition of what is eligible versus ineligible, and it is likely that what is previously considered as ineligible could get changed. But it's not in writing, that's what I was told. Today?
It says year to date spend. If you look, it's spent, so we've only spent 14,000, but we've allocated and made projects, under my school, like, we just have one spreadsheet that kind of has everything that we've listed off and out of it.
Just my concern was we approved the money that possibly sounds like a capital project. I don't think it'd be prudent to put that on hold until we get that decision. The Rotary was made in haste, we didn't have the right information.
And that's what he's saying, is whether, to go with one ask as opposed to one offering it. So,
Well, I'd like to motion that we grant the request of our Port McNeill Legion, subject to verification from the grant writer. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
One second for discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough information at all. This is for the community, that maybe we should be looking at putting a generator here, where everyone is, there's room for everyone, there's room for social distance. So under the guise of this being an emergency type situation, I think it needs to be looked at really closely, and perhaps that money should be invested in our own building.
Yeah,
So I can't support it this time, especially if we don't even have the proper form as well.
I do agree with Councillor Cole in that, at what point do we, I mean, there could be others that come to us as well, and so what would define you know, is it are we actively looking for more warming places? Are there other areas where perhaps a generator would be of value? Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
I would like to move that we
I
table
know
this.
there's a motion on the table right now.
I'm sorry, what's the motion?
To approve the fund subject to verification by the Crown.
Okay, well, I'm moving to table that until we have clarification.
Okay,
I don't think we can be passing it until we actually know that we can pass it.
second for that?
I'll second tabling it.
All those in favor of tabling then? Opposed? Okay. So that will get tabled to the next meeting when we actually have, I'm not going to guarantee it's the next meeting coming up, but when our CFO has the answer for us, it will be on that following meeting.
Question.
Yes?
Does the CFO have permission to make a request to inquire if this is?
Would you like to make that motion then, and then we'll make sure that it's captured?
Go ahead. I need a motion that he can ask for permission.
Well, I know that we always end up with this thing of, was it just a suggestion or was it an actual motion? So let's make a motion and then we know it'll get done.
Sure, I'll certainly do that. And the motion would be to grant the CFO permission to inquire if the $20,000 for the Legion would meet the COVID funding requirements.
Seconded for that?
Could I friendly amend?
Yeah.
Could he not inquire, because like you said, there may be other places for generators, so could it not be an inquire on the part of, if we put it into our own building, is that acceptable? If it was to be a generator put into a not-for-profit, if it was to be a generator put into the seniors housing, and I don't know how that's run, so like, is there a way to kind of do it across the board so that we would have an idea for all the different types?
Mr., is that a question for me?
Yes.
I
Go ahead.
think so.
Okay, so I would like to defer this to CEO as to how much due diligence should I do. One of the comments I had was we want to know, have they gone out and they've taken 4 quotes or 3 quotes? Are they asking us for 100% reimbursement, or are they contributing their own funds, etc.? So I would ask if we can request each to also. Otherwise, if the direction is for me to do the due diligence, I have no problem.
No, I think Shelley's saying for you to ask the grant
I
officer.
get that. But your question is beyond the scope of that motion.
No, not really, because I'm just saying, instead of going specifically and asking, can we give the Legion money for a generator, is there a way for you to go and say, can we put a generator
In
into
a
a
public
public
building.
building? Can we put a generator into a not-for-profit or whatever, like the seniors housing?
I will certainly do that, Councillor, but what I think is the fundamental question is, can we spend this money towards a generator or not? I think that's the question. Whether I personally do not see the answer would change whether we are spending that money in our building or the other one. But I take your directions and I'll be very specific in my question.
I'm just,
I totally agree with you.
you heard what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, no,
Because if they're
absolutely.
saying municipal building, yeah, go for it, no problem, but it's a problem if it's a not-for-profit. That's all I was needing to get, so you didn't have to keep going back and forth.
I thank you for that, and you have a good point, because they could tomorrow come and say, well, you asked for municipal building versus this building and so on.
Yeah.
I take that.
So if we're gonna get that specific as to what permission you have to ask, I wanted to make sure we were specific.
So all those in favor with that change? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 6A, we have a table item which is brought back to us regarding the flying of our flags at half-mast. We had asked for staff to reach out again, and we did get a response from the Nundees First Nations. They have relayed to the town that they believe sufficient time has passed. Having the flags at half-mast is a show of respect, and that real reconciliation through action, not a symbolic gesture of the flag. We also talked about a couple of things, such as possibly putting an orange light or flying one of the flags as an alternate show of respect. So what's your pleasure, council?
I'd like the motion that we put our flag back to full mast.
I'll second that, please.
Okay. Discussion on that. Go ahead.
Like to hear what your, I guess maybe a question for you, Mayor. Where did this request come from? Is this something we're hearing from the public, or how did it get on the agenda?
Well, it came forward in, I don't know, we just had a general discussion. I know that Councillor Downey had asked. I mean, I can't remember what meeting it is, but we had a general discussion about the flags and you know, that it was originally done with an intention, and that some time has passed now, and and I had mentioned that in my meetings at UBCM, other municipalities have moved forward making their own decisions, so it wasn't just a blanket across the province thing anymore.
So it's not like we got any official letters or complaints to the town, like from the public?
No, but I would, well, we've got a motion first on the floor, but, you know, I would motion that we would look into, yeah, afterwards.
The Harbor Committee did bring it up as well. They were asking when it would go back up, and my answer to them was, out of our meeting, we had made our motion originally to base it on the federal guideline, and that they hadn't changed their guidelines, so we were going to stick to keeping them at half mast.
I'm saying that we raise our flag because, as our First Nations have said, that a time has passed. You know, relationships are the proof of the direction that we're headed, not where our mast is positioned. And so, with their guidance and affirmation is why I'm bringing this forward.
I just want to say that usually we make a motion and we stick with it. We don't go back and try to change the motion. That's what we're doing here.
I'm not, no, it's Charlotte's motion's on the
Yeah.
table. Okay.
Which is to change our original motion to leave it at half-mast until the federal government has put theirs up. So we're done
Well,
with discussion.
we were, yeah, and we are also going by federal or provincial, so the federal hasn't, but the provincial has raised their flags. But this is. Go ahead, Councillor.
I would support this motion. The only thing I would like to see is we don't put a ratty flag up to full height. Let's make sure we got a nice one there.
I think you're referring to our flag as.
Probably time to refresh it.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. I'd like to put a motion forward that we communicate with the public prior to doing so, and that communication be distributed to council no later than November 5th prior to the public release. I think it's important for us to communicate with the public.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion?
Is that a doable timeline?
I didn't hear the date on.
November 5th.
Yes.
Are you asking for a press release to be sent out? Is that your intention
Yes.
behind your motion?
I guess
Go
my
ahead.
concern would be the wording. It's a pretty sensitive issue, so.
That's why the communication be distributed to council first. No later than November 5th prior to the public. So I'll read it again. I don't know if you. So a motion to communicate with the public prior to raising the flag, and that communication be distributed to council no later than November 5th prior to the public release.
Distributed means, doesn't necessarily mean we have any input on the way the motion is worded, but.
Friendly amended if you like.
Distributed to council
For input.
prior to public release.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on that?
If I may say, I'm comfortable with the mayor issuing a press release. But I'm not comfortable with the mayor and council issuing a press release that we have absolutely nothing to say about, that I have nothing to say about. So I don't mind if you do it, but don't do it for me. I guess.
Well, no, the motion was just that it comes to all of council first for input. So then,
What date is it scheduled to be released?
well, it would be after November 5th. It's coming to us by November 5th, no later than November 5th.
And you'll have meaningful input.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, 7A, September 2021 Public Works Department report. Any questions? Our Public Works manager is here. If not, motion to receive.
Question? Thank you very
Go
much.
ahead, Councilor Cole.
Julie? The road, is there a status on the project of the Rotary seniors sidewalk that we were talking about earlier in the meeting?
No, there is not. That has not been yet approved as a capital project. We did bring that forward, I believe, in 2019. I do have, since, have received some quotes. Actually, just as recently as today, I've had McLean Engineering involved in some of the, we need to do some surveying to see where it's feasible to actually put it. So we're definitely laying the groundwork for this project, but I haven't as yet put it onto the 2022 capital expenditures.
Right, because we approved 26,000 through grant funding.
Right.
And now there's, I'm not sure if you picked up on that for the meeting, there's maybe some concern that it's not eligible.
Right.
So that's why I just wanted to
Right.
see if it was getting ready to be built tomorrow, and maybe perhaps.
No,
maybe
the
just take a
groundwork
pause.
is being laid out, and there is some surveying involved which has to be done. We're at the feasibility stage as to where to actually put it in, so it meets ADA requirements and a successful project. The 26,000, to be quite honest with you, is extremely low figure. When I bought this forward, also as a suggestion, as I say, I think 2019, I'm not sure. That figure then was about 80,000, and we're now looking more than likely north of that by about 20,000. It's a substantial expenditure.
To our CAO, and then I'll make a comment, and then Councilor Downey.
Thank you, Mayor. Question to Councillor Cole. Based on Rotary's request for funding, we needed to put together a sort of a land use agreement, which has not been done yet. And with the further information from our Chief Financial Officer about the eligibility of the COVID-19 funds, I won't be moving forward with that until we get verification that those funds can be allocated to the project. So the project, as Julian mentioned, is on hold until we get some, number one, an agreement in place, and number two, verification that the use of the funds can be used towards that.
And just wanted to make a comment that if Rotary takes the helm, we've seen with our seniors housing, though, that was a different economic climate, it's considerably less when Rotary takes, takes over and has the in-kind contributions that we can't do as a town. Go ahead, Councilor Downey.
That was going to be my point. So there's clearly a need for a pathway, a safe pathway. And I would hate for this to get caught up in bureaucracy and set aside and deferred in perpetuity.
Councilor Mitchell?
On that topic, I'd like to make a motion that we direct the CFO to see if he can find another source of that 26,000 so they can go ahead with this project.
Seconder for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay,
So,
discussion?
so that would basically be deferring it to our budget discussion? That's kind of what I was thinking, if this thing could go through, then we would tackle that as part of our budget discussion.
Our CFO would suggest either that it comes from budget, where it would come out of our budget, or if there was a grant that we could apply for. I think that's what we're asking. Go ahead, CFO.
So
May I add this in my list of questions for the grants
Yes.
officer for the COVID safe and
Yes, please.
and an amount of $80,000 or
It was 26.
26?
What's it, 26.5? Something like that, yeah. I think you have it written down, you said earlier there, yeah.
But Julian mentioned it's north of, it's close to 100,000.
Well, his-
Rotary's doing the project,
Okay.
and they said to us, this is the amount of money we want from you, so we're assuming that they're taking care of the rest of it.
Yeah.
They may get the engineering and say, hey, to build it to that standard, there needs to be something else happening, but at this point, we're just contributing to them being the prime and doing it.
Okay, thank you.
And at that meeting, I did ask that question, I said that number seemed low, but they were confident they could do it, so. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, back to the public works. Are there any other questions for him? And then seeing none, then have a motion to receive the report, please. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, 7D, we have our finance update. Move for discussion. We have our CFO here if you have any questions. Move for discussion? No, or there's no discussion. Move for receipt. Move for receipt, okay, seconded. Second that. Anything else? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. My feedback to you would be that that's great. You have supplied us with everything that we needed, and it's much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do just want to make a point, or something just to highlight, because I think it's pretty amazing. On the last page 26, under grants, this year we've received $3,649,497, which is pretty impressive. So thank you to staff for that. 7C, August and September check listings. Seconded. Aye. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, next we're going into bylaws. 8A, official community plan. So we had a number of items given to us, the open house OCP revision summary, the summary of revisions, which Kevin gave to us earlier. And just wondering, as far as the official community plan goes, what further input or changes council is looking to do here? Do we have Kevin still available? Was there any questions from the official community plan that did not get answered earlier?
The recreational vehicle,
That's the zoning.
that's zoning,
Yeah, we'll get
that's
that.
not OCP.
That's right.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, Councilor Mitchell?
I'm a little confused about the mapping for future uses, and I don't necessarily agree with the choices that have been made on those, and I believe that we need to sit down as a council with maybe an open-ended amount of time and go through those maps and say, is this really what we want to see here? Because we haven't done that. And the same thing goes with the bylaw. There's some things in that bylaw that in my view need to be fixed or clarified, and we need to spend the time to do it in a committee of the whole, I believe, and get it done. Racing through it isn't working for me. I need to be comfortable in knowing that the constituents, the people who live in Fort McNeil are going to be saying, yeah, you're doing what we wanted you to do. And I think one of the things, and I'm going to say this on my little speech, is we see in the official community plan that we support a rural lifestyle. I see a lot of stuff in this official community plan that scorns the rural lifestyle, that wants to change it and put us in a little box and make us look like Comox and Nanaimo. And I don't know that everybody in Port McNeil really wants to be like that, and perhaps they want to be a little bit more rural. And some of their stuff is going to be a little bit more in our face, and that's okay with me. And I think we need to make sure that our bylaw reflects the needs and the desires of the people who've chosen to live in Port McNeil, all 2,500 of us.
Before other comments are made, I just would like to just read, because I did ask for some clarification on bylaw readings, just so that everybody knows the process. So a local government bylaw must receive 3 readings before it can proceed to final adoption. This process allows elected officials to provide input into a bylaw and make necessary changes before it is adopted. Each reading and adoption are typically decided by a majority vote of council or board members present unless another voting rule applies to the particular matter. Most local governments do 3 readings at the same meeting. However, if a bylaw is controversial or more research is needed, the readings may be done at separate meetings. Each reading is passed by resolution. So the various readings are taken to mean first reading, tabling or introduction. The second, discussion in principle and on the context of the bylaw. And third reading is the final discussion, including any changes along the way. So I think it's really, oh, and then, sorry, all bylaws must be read and adopted in a meeting that is open to the public. And this particular one that we have here before us, it needs to go to a public, I keep saying public hearing, which we can only get to at second reading. So if council had decided that tonight, first reading, to give it first reading, it just is a step along in the process. It's been introduced to us. And also it should be known too that like second reading, it could sit there for a long time. We could make changes, and come to another meeting and make changes before council felt confident on a third reading. So I just want council to know that in my opinion, it would be at least applicable to give it first reading because it has been introduced to us. And we don't need to get it to the point where it's absolutely perfect before we give it second reading. Like I said, we could down the road, if that's what council wants, give it second reading and it can sit there while we fix it. I do agree with you. I think it's a good idea to dedicate a committee of the whole, which we do have scheduled one at the beginning of next month.
So sorry, can you just read me first
reading
means
equals tabling or introduction.
Okay,
Second equals discussion in principle and on the content of the bylaw. Third reading equals final discussion, including any changes made along the way.
and then at that point, we would have the public
At
hearing.
second reading, it would have the public hearing. Second reading, before the third reading. So we cannot give it third reading until we've had public hearing, yeah.
Okay.
And we cannot have the public hearing until it's at the second reading. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Your worship, just a process recommendation. First, second, all fine, working with council is fine. I strongly recommend that any work that we do on the bylaw, we do before public hearing, so that any changes that are made, and we have a final polished document that can be presented to the community at public hearing for them to then comment on, so that council is happy with what they're presenting prior to that public hearing. So that'd be a recommendation just from a process.
And I would also say probably it shouldn't be a committee of the whole, though the conversation can be much more casual. If we do a special meeting, then anything that we decide and ratify can be included in the document, and then we can get to work at cleaning that document up.
Our motion is for first reading.
Second it. Discussion on that. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I'm just going to defer to the CAO. This will be, well, not committee of the whole. We'll have a special meeting then on the first Tuesday with an undisclosed amount of time where we can dig through and all the things that we want. Kevin, is there a possibility if we needed your verification on anything that you? I'm not saying we will, we'll discuss that as a council, and then if we need to reach out.
Through your worship and council, whenever the council needs clarification at any point, a map and anything like that, please reach out, and I can, for the special meeting, I can make sure I'm in attendance to work through the various proposed changes that council wants to see.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is there any way that we could like, say I email about the automobile repair thing, and we just all agree on that, and then the change? And then we make the change, or do we have to make it, those kind of changes at the table?
What we have to be very careful of is it has to be in an open and transparent way. So if by doing it by email, as much as there's ease in that, it's actually not allowed. Go ahead.
Through your worship, if I may make a recommendation. When we have this special meeting, what I recommend is everybody come forward with those kinds of comments, Councilor Cole, and we have them, and we can actually document all of them in a document that we can then add to our revision summary. And then we have a updated revision summary that can then be presented to the public. So the public knows all the proposed revisions that have come out of the conversation, and then it's open and transparent to the public of what revisions have been proposed from council.
So come to the meeting with itemized list or something.
Exactly, and then we can document those through the process of everybody's itemized lists, and then that can be presented as part of the public hearing.
Excellent. Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Bennett.
Just looking at the calendar, that our committee of the whole would be on November 2nd. Could we schedule a special meeting to take place on November 2nd, but schedule it, say, 3 hours after the meeting of the committee of the whole, so that those recommendations then can go forward to our council meeting on November 9th?
Yeah. Well, the recommendations don't have to go to court if we just make it a special meeting, we can ratify those. If it's a committee of the whole, then we'll have to bring them forward. So if we just change it from committee of the whole to special meeting, we can actually make resolutions, and they're officially
So I will motion that our November 2nd committee of the whole become a special meeting.
Okay. Seconded by? Okay, any discussion? Go ahead.
What time is that?
Well, actually, I was gonna ask, it's normally 10 to 12, but I was wondering if council would mind if it started at 9. If not, I will have to leave early because I have a specialist appointment down Island, but
9's good with me.
9 works.
9 works. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I'll have
begin
to
at
get
9,
up early.
we'll be till 12.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
6:30 there?
I'll be up prepared.
And, okay, so we move on to the zoning bylaw. So I would imagine this is going to go generally in the same direction. Go ahead. Did you want to, so can I have a motion then to give proposed zoning bylaw number 705, 2021. I'm not going to call it final draft.
First reading?
First reading?
Yep.
Seconder? Okay. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And this will also be moved to that meeting as well for discussion at that meeting. I don't think we need to make a motion. I think it's understood. We're going to discuss the OCP and the zoning bylaw. Okay? All right. Number 10A, new business. Development of town-owned property. So this was a notice of motion brought forward by Councillor Downey. And it's a pleasure, Councillor Downey, would you like to open up?
Thank you, staff, for preparing this report. There was quite a lot of detail in there that I was not anticipating. I will state that my objective in bringing this forward was to see land be considered and opened up, that we would invite suggestions and from those with experience in developing land to present some opportunities that we could use to expand the housing here in our community. I am concerned that the report delved into talking about BC housings and a number of different BC housing origin funding, CMHC solutions, talks about grants. My intention bringing this forward was that we could get some land opened up and a development in the works or in planning and start having that conversation and not a conversation, invite people in with ideas, whether they're local people or from outside our community. I am concerned that if our goal is to only consider projects which may be funded from outside our community or from another level of government, we may never see any of this land developed at all. And that won't address our housing shortage that we're currently in. As you guys know, a builder came and approached us to purchase one of the lots that we had purchased deliberately for access. We were solicited. Somebody was looking for land because they couldn't find something elsewhere. So we know that there's demand. If they're coming and asking for our land, that means nobody else is releasing theirs. We need to open up some land here. So thank you, staff. I see that there is a recommendation here from staff to consider putting this proposal forward to the new economic development manager that we are in the midst of hiring, and I would not be opposed to that at all. I think that's probably a very good suggestion.
Go ahead, Councillor Barron. Name I just forgot for a second.
My question is almost, maybe two boots on the ground, I don't know, but does anybody know what the rules are? Like, can we as a town partner with XYZ, and can we say, like, you have to sell, half of these lots have to be sold to people that already live in town. Can we partner with the developer and we say, okay, the land's worth $100,000 because that's easy now. So we're putting $100,000 towards it. You put $100,000 towards it, and then we split the profit 50-50. Like, does anybody understand what the rules are or the options are for us to do something with the land?
You know what? I think we have an expert in the audience that would be able to help us with that. I can answer that question for you.
I would almost be entertained. I would rather see that, maybe in us, if we're gonna get a staff report, I would rather see that before we even start to look at. And then can we just take a chunk of it? Like, do we then like hire Macapany to lay out what they think would be the, you know, you can get 2 lots here and the rest of it, because I mean, if we're getting into development permits now, you've got dedicated park space and all that other fun stuff, so how do we navigate all of that before we get much further down the path?
I have 3 over here, council. Great, all of them, sorry. But, all of them great questions. So, because the town is a property owner, you actually don't need to act specifically as the town in regards to certain ways to deal with the land. It's not a piece of parcel. It's a piece of own fee simple parcel, which gives you a lot of different options. There are a ton of different options. You could do a housing corporation. You could partner with any developer through an RFP process. You could choose a piece to sell to a particular developer, and you can put conditions on that land that they need to meet X, Y, and Z conditions as a purchase and sale agreement. So your options are very, very broad on what you can do because it's a piece of fee simple owned property, which gives you a lot of different options. So it comes down to what your goals are, what your goals are. If the goals is to produce as many housing units as possible, you know, so it really comes down to the goals that you're looking for. So yeah, your options are very, very wide open because it's a piece of land. Does that help?
Any other question? Oh, sorry, Councilor Mitchell, thank you. Thank you for your patience. This is flying bee isn't working very well for me here.
Well, first of all, I have to say I fully support asking for proposals that aren't going to cost us any money. We're not going to develop it. We're going to ask somebody to come to us for the Campbell Way property. It's close to services, it's not suitable for a park, and it's zoned for housing. So it makes good sense to say, hey, here's a piece of land, what can you do for us? We don't want to spend any money, we want housing. And let them come and make us some proposals, see what happens. That's what Councilor Young is after. I think we should do the same thing with the piece of property next to the hospital. It's probably only big enough for 5 or 6 houses, but maybe somebody would want it. Hoy Bay, I absolutely will not support a housing development in Hoy Bay. This council, and you may have been on the council at the time, granted a CDA, comprehensive development plan area for Hoy Bay for about up to 500 housing units to the forest company that owns that property, and they've done nothing with it. We own a tiny little piece of Hoy Bay, just a little bit of waterfront there, nice park, some trails. The upland property on the upside of the road is pretty much useless for housing development, but it'll always be good for trails and hiking and that sort of thing. So I'm not in favor of us developing our tiny little bit of Hoy Bay that we own, while the forest company that owns the rest of that land does nothing with it. And we zoned it so they could do something. So we need to put some pressure on them to start doing something with it. We need the housing. And there must be some leverage that we have. I don't know. Who's explored it? I don't know. So we did what they wanted, and they've done nothing with it. Now we're looking at taking what should be parkland and asking somebody to build houses on it. Not my watch. The proposed use of this land isn't supported by our current OCP. Our current OCP, which was written in, 97 or something, supported Hoy Bay for a multiple of different uses. One of them was housing. But we took care of that when we zoned for 500 houses to be possibly built in that area. So the little bit we got for parkland should stay as parkland because the housing aspect of Hoy Bay is already looked after. They just need to do something with it. It's already zoned for them. So I don't support asking for proposals on the Hoy Bay property. The staff report is not comprehensive, nor is it complete with respect to the highest and best use of our land in Hoy Bay, or 58 or so acres. This is a one-dimensional report which only considers using the land for housing. And our current OCP 30 suggests that consideration should be given to the recreational benefit of this piece of land. And so I would like to see that happen. Although the current OCP talks about housing in Hoy Bay, this need has been taken care of. The bylaw number is 605/2009. We created that comprehensive development area, I think that's what they call it, and allow them to do what they need to do. So I would support this motion if Hoy Bay is removed from the next.
Before I go to Councillor Downey, I don't remember it being 500. I just want a clarification on that. Go ahead.
Just a point of interest for council. The sample RFP on the very back page, with the developers over the last year, I probably handed that out no less than 4 times. So there has been some interest. It is a generic, request for proposal. I have made it clear to them that this was not something issued by this current council, but by a council in the past, and if they had ideas, that they could come forward to council. So this particular page has been handed out, and to this point, none have come back, but just so that council knows that there has been some interest.
Councillor Downey?
I was just going to comment, Councillor Mitchell, just regarding the Hoy Bay lands. I agree too. We need to have a park in there. I guess the question would be, does the whole chunk need to be a park? Or much like developments such as Bear Mountain, if you drive through there, you will see house, you'll see condos, a golf course, and embedded in a row of houses, you will see a city lot or equivalent of 2 lots that have been set aside, and they are a park. They are a park sandwiched in amongst houses. It's there for people to stop. There's benches and a little play area. And they have this little, I'm gonna call it a pocket park, because that's kind of what it is. But they're just kind of interspersed, and so if you were one to do a little walkabout through that little area, your kids could stop and play here, they could stop and play there. You were tired, you can stop and have a rest yourself or visit friends, whatever. So that's sort of, like, that's me, that's my vision, right? That's what I see, and that's why I think that, you know, developers, as was said here, we would have to identify what our goals are. You know, there is land, and we all know that view property and waterfront are sought after. It's got a tax value of 720 grand and change or something right now that we don't make a dime on right now. We need housing. If we had some patio homes in there even, they're your walking distance for seniors who need to get downtown to get services as opposed to up and down hills on the other lands that you're speaking of. But I think that if we identify what our goals and objectives are, and that would include access to the beach, having parks sandwiched and located along the waterfront there, and a variety of, a mix of housing in there. So I'm not a developer, but I do notice developments that I travel through, and I intentionally go and look and see what other people in communities are doing, and I just would like to have that conversation. And unfortunately, I think that the Hoy Bay land we would have more of an uptake if that was put out as opposed to our land between adjacent to Pebble Bay right now.
So anybody else need to speak?
I'll speak after Ryan.
Okay, go ahead.
I hear what Councillor Downey says, and I think that we need to look at that piece of land in the context of where it is. Get the map out, I did that. We've got an approved area that can have up to 500 units on it, adjoining our Hoy Bay property. It's a tiny piece of property. Our citizens deserve unfettered access to a small piece of beach. They don't have it now in this community. Every piece of beach that we have access to, from the ferry terminal to the end of the beach drive, is sandwiched between houses. And sometimes it's inaccessible. They're using it for parking, they're using it for whatever. It's not beach access. This is a nice piece of property that was identified 25 years ago as a good use, the park being a good use for it. Nothing's changed. This still would make a darn good park. And I don't think it's fair to sacrifice a piece of land that we got for a song to sell it to get some tax dollars and restrict the access that our citizens deserve to a piece of beach where they don't have to try and fit themselves in between two houses that, you know, that people don't really want them on their beach. Forget it. That's our beach right now. We should keep it.
I just want to say this was a very, very high level discussion, and I think we're going way down that we've already made the decision on Hoy Bay, which we're far, far, far from that. Go ahead, Councillor Bull.
Thank you, Mayor Wixon. Just to know, I don't know if council is aware, but if we did sell the land, that land has to go on our land reserve, so it's not like we can put a roof on the pool or something with it. I support the Pioneer Hill Drive investigations, and I think we should also include the land by the hospital. But I don't support moving forward with regards to Hoy Bay. First things first would be First Nations consultation. I've asked for that officially, and it was denied in council in the motion.
Just point of order, it was not denied. It was not been denied. We just haven't got to there. Because, and Nungies in particular, are going through the modernization of the land use plan, of negotiations with Western. We're so far down the list right now. We're working with them on physician crisis. We are working with First Nations. We're just not working on that order. I just want to say it was not denied.
Well, I think maybe you should check the motions. I made a motion to consult with the Nandis on Hoy Bay, and it was denied. Another motion came that we have high-level discussions with them, and I'm happy to see we're doing that now. But I made a very specific motion about Hoy Bay, and that was denied. And yeah, that was the gist of it. Yeah.
But if you don't know what you see on the how,
and that life assessment actually happens.
Oh, I don't know the intricacies of that. All I know is we haven't talked to them at all about this property. We've had opportunities during the OCP, and as you indicated, Mayor Wickstrom, we've had meetings with them. They say things like removing the mask as a show of respect. Real reconciliation comes through action. So if all of a sudden we say, developers, bring us your plan for this property without talking to them first, that is a real slap in the face, and that's not good neighbor relations.
I don't think that's what Councillor Down is suggesting. I think that there's a number of steps that go hand in hand with that, and that's one of the very first steps.
The suggestion is that we forward Hoy Bay and Pioneer Hill to our economic development person to pursue economic development.
That's what Councillor,
Correct.
Councillor, hang on a second, point of order. Councillor Downey put the motion forward. Staff has given us a recommendation which is much more high level, that the subject of housing development be passed on to the new economic development manager for research. I would change it slightly to say, and subsequent conversation, then reporting to mayor and council.
Sorry, the motion on the table is?
No, I didn't say it was a motion. I said that would be I said that is what the staff's recommendation is.
I don't think we actually have gotten to it.
We haven't gotten to a motion.
Okay, we haven't gone to motion. Okay, so that's why I'm opposing it. It's really bad optics to say, do any sort of pursuing Hoy Bay in any way, shape, or form, whether it's a development or a park, without talking to our First Nations neighbors first. That's why I oppose it. And I did want to mention, we got a notice of motion for this, which is fine. I liked having, but where was the decision coming to spend staff time on a report? So if I do a notice of motion, I want a skate park or something, then staff is automatically going to do a report. My understanding of notice of motion is it would come to us if we discuss the merits of staff spending time on a report.
And you know what, I'm really glad you brought that up because I've reached out, Cowichan just recently did a notice of motion policy, which lays out very clearly how that works. So notice of motion was something, an idea that I brought forward so that councillors could bring their things to the table, and we've sort of been grappling a little bit because we didn't completely understand. So I'm hoping that that will come to the next meeting for council to discuss so that moving forward, we will always get a very clear, we'll always have a very clear idea of how a notice of motion is brought, what comes with it, how we speak to it, and then how we move through that process. It's very comprehensive.
So in this particular case, perhaps we shouldn't have had a staff report, or
I'm not sure.
For clarity, can I just clarify? I only submitted the document that I presented to you guys 2 weeks ago. This was of their own volition. They chose to do this. I did not request it or ask for it. That was upon staff, took it upon themselves. So I did say that I was appreciative of it, and I am, but I did not request it, just for clarity.
So if we can get back to,
So I have a question. In what you guys refer to as Hoy Bay, excluding the subdivision, right? Just the stuff that the town owns. Before anything can happen there, whether we develop it or somebody else develop it, there's gonna have to be some kind of ARC assessment with an idea of what's gonna, like there's going to be consultation there, period, right?
whether it's a park or
Whether it's a park. So if a developer came and said, at the end of Beach Drive, this makes sense from a planning point of view to carve off this one lot here, and I'll build your park on the other side of it. We don't, like if we don't talk to somebody, we don't know if that's a possibility, and then how do you weigh maybe making one more residential lot, or maybe it's on the far side of it, because Mosaic is saying right now, anybody that phones them about that property, their real estate guy is saying, well, we're not doing nothing until the OCP's done. Well, we're not doing anything until the OCP's done. We are not doing anything until the OCP is done. But maybe the way that the planning goes, there's like a perfect little lot there for a home, and that developer says, and you put the lot up, and then, by the way, I'll clean up that whole road and I'll put your parking lot on Beach Drive, because that's what we're gonna do for the park. I'll put your parking lot on Beach Drive for your park in there. Maybe that's what a developer would come with, but if we exclude Hoy Bay, then you've just lost that possibility.
And that was one of the things that was discussed, even though I still believe that whole subdivision was imperfect and the process was flawed. But one of the things was discussed was exactly that. What would they do in exchange for doing their subdivision? So that was, and I believe if I defer to an expert there, is something that we can speak with developers on, correct?
Yes, to your worship. That type of subdivision, when the developer does come to build the CDA1 lots, mosaic, piece of land, they are required to give 5% park dedication at that time also. So that's 5% of the total land. The way the new OCP is written, that authority of where that land is and all that is now in the hands of the approving officer and county to choose that. Under your old OCP, you didn't have that authority. You now have that. So when they come forward for subdivision, 5% park dedication. If a big piece of land for 5% park dedication is going to be a significant amount that you're going to be able to get.
Councilor Mitchell?
Could you have staff read the motion that's on the floor?
There is no motion.
I'm sorry, I thought there was a motion.
No,
Oh,
I said, all there is a staff recommendation. You could turn that into a motion. Right now, there's nothing.
Just from out of curiosity point of view, this request for proposals, is this, like, do we like this? How does it go out? Do you put a big ad in the Gazette and say, hey, we got all this land, bring us your ideas and let's talk? Or like, how does it work?
So I do feel that the economic development person would be able to put some pieces together. So I will make a motion that the subject of the housing development be passed on to the new economic development manager for research, subsequent conversation and reporting to mayor and council. Is there anybody who care to second it?
I'll second her session.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it should be more specific about the property. If that said Pioneer Hill, I would agree, but it's, you're not being specific about the properties, it's just referencing the report.
Yeah. And the intention of me making the motion was for it to be just very high level, that's all.
And the other thing is you're asking somebody to put risk into this. So let's say you say Pioneer Hill and X, Y, and Z come and they say, okay, I'm going to put my money into that, I'm going to risk that, and they start down the process, and then Mosaic says, oh, I'm going to pull the pin and they're building. Because I think, if I understand it right, so the person who was here, their everything that they've spent, all their risk is now maybe completely gone, right? So the benefit might be gone. Whereas somebody who is going to do, who wanted to do, like I just said, like maybe one lot on Beach Drive, and then we get the profit. Like I just don't know why we would exclude it. Nobody's committing to anything.
So actually, we should be talking about the motion.
Call the question.
Call the question?
May I speak?
Go ahead.
I was going to suggest that because it refers to housing, I think that opens up to all three properties, property adjacent, which I know was set aside by Jerry Kearney and his council way back in the day as land for, to be for seniors, housing or an extended care facility. That was the intention, but perhaps that might be a proposal that may come forward, I don't know. So if we leave it at housing, for housing opportunities, that would be the discretion of that person, and we of course would have to still, as I say, we need to pinpoint what our goals are.
And that would also include public and private, right?
I'm just gonna say, in the housing report, it doesn't say we need multi-million-dollar houses, we need townhouses and the missing middle, so.
Yeah.
I don't know why we'd be looking at more waterfront houses to solve that problem.
I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
People can live in a
Okay,
small-
just, there are no items from in camera to be made public. Are there any questions from the public pertaining to the meeting? Go ahead.
Something about the OCP.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the stats, and since 2016, there was a long strike. There's been COVID, and there's been a new census done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm wondering how you're going to embed the new 2021 stats into the snapshot of the town. And when that will be done.
Through your worship. It all depends on timing of the census data. I'm a planner, so I'm a census and data geek. We're waiting for bated breath. The reality is, there's the likelihood that the OCP will be adopted prior to the release of that, data, and therefore they won't be directly embedded into that, into the actual document itself. That doesn't mean that the town should not be taking those into consideration when decisions are made. So that data when released should be presented to council and should be integrated into the overall sort of discussions for things of housing and population and things like that for future decisions.
Well, can I follow that up?
Yeah, sure.
My concerns about this are that the snapshot of the employment statistics are going to be way off. Remote working now is higher, and right now in the report, they're 0%. So that's going to be different. Our demographics have changed. We've had housing starts, we've had quite a few. We've had big turnover. There's a shift in our economic structure, like how people are making their money. There's a shift in that. And there's a lot of money being invested in this OCP. And so I looked today, the first stats will be out February 2022. And then it's going to be 7 reports coming. And so if...
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I think that the points that you raise are important to bring forward to the public hearing so that when we go to narrow down, finalize, whatever you want to say, the OCP, that we keep those indicators that you're talking about in mind. And that will become part of the public record and will be part of what is given for us for consideration. And that would be helpful.
Sure, just keep in mind that the last OCP was also 2016 data. The last time there was a study done, it was same census year.
Sorry?
It was the same census year, the last time there was data collected on the town for an official plan or a discussion of the plan, isn't there?
Oh, that one that you guys started, your council started.
Oh, no, that one was one, I think that the APC, I think you're talking about,
Yeah,
gave
that one that Shirley
recommendations. Yeah.
did, that was 2016 as well.
Any other questions from the public? Seeing none, there are no reporters, so motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all those in favor, opposed, thank you. We did